Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, still morning. Well, pleasure that you're joining this series, this Spotlight series. Today we have the pleasure to interview Babette. She is the franchise specialist within Dentons and beyond Dentons. And Babette, welcome and good to have you. And we discussed in advance and we have some interesting questions to you. We have like 20 minutes, so let's kick off. Babette, franchising is the structure for international expansion for many consumer brands. Why is that franchising so popular?
So, hi everyone, nice to see you. Look, all I do is franchising, so of course I would say it's a great structure, but it really is because it's an asset-light structure of expansion. Yeah, if a brand wants to enter a new market, normally the cost of expansion can be quite high. They need to incorporate a subsidiary in the country, employ people, do the real estate, and have all the risk and learning around getting to know a new country with different consumer preferences, different laws, different challenges. In franchising, it's a risk sharing. It's like a joint venture, except you don't have to put any money in. The franchisee puts all the money in, and the franchisor just contributes know-how, product, and brand. So it's a really easy way to test the market and to get to scale very quickly. And that's why it works well if you have a strong brand and a product.
You've been in franchising now for 30 years, 30, and you have worked with companies in the space of retail, hospitality, education, services industry. And now it looks like you can use this franchise concept pretty much for everything. What would be your advice to a company considering a franchise option? And what makes a particular business ripe or suitable for franchising?
So look, I've got my opinion on that. I think you need the following four things. You need a strong brand that people recognize. You need a business model that has enough EBITDA profitability in it for the franchisor and the franchisee to each make a good whack to make some money. It needs to be relatively easy to communicate and teach. If you try to franchise a medical skill, is very difficult because you can only franchise it to doctors and they may need to go on a 2-year course. So forget it. Much easier to franchise installation of air conditioning, right? Because you just franchise it to anyone who is willing to go on a 4-week course. And then the final thing you need the franchising toolkit. And that's some of the work we do with clients to help them figure out what that is. So that is their training and audit and support programs.
So baristas fit better in the franchise models than doctors, real life.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
If it's too complicated, keep it
Yeah.
simple, I think.
Okay.
Not trying to your franchise a complicated business. Look, in the hotel industry, they are doing it. But I wouldn't say it's complex as such. It's a big business, a hotel, but the skills that are being carried out have been quite automated. So that's why it's easy to franchise a Holiday Inn and a lot more difficult to franchise a luxury hotel. The more
Yeah.
bespoke it becomes, the harder it is to put someone on a 4-week course and teach them.
And Babette, you have a different model than the average dentist lawyer. I mean, I'm not sure whether the average dentist lawyer exists, but you also operate as a franchise consultancy business. How come? How does this happen historically? And what do you offer?
So that's a good question. It's been quite an interesting journey to get to this franchise consultancy business. Basically, through my legal work, what I've noticed is that clients often they don't have a robust business plan in place when they franchise opportunistically, or they have been to a big consultancy like McKinsey or OC&C or Deloitte, and when they present me with the business model, I notice gaps or mistakes. So I used to, just in my role as their lawyer, explain to them what they needed to change, and we do that in 2 hours and charge our hourly rate. And then, one day I realized that previously the client had paid 100,000 or 200,000 euro to McKinsey to get a business model that doesn't work. I thought, hang on, we're missing a trick here. I can maybe do this, and maybe I can even do it better. So we set up Dentons Europe Consulting, which actually is a Dutch company. It's located in the Netherlands. And through that company, I'm able to offer business consulting services. It's also quite a good cross-sell to the legal work because the clients really need both, the business model. They need to know, can I franchise it? And what fees should I charge? Those are usually two main questions. And they obviously also need their legal advice. So most of the cases you can get both, and it's an easier cross-sell than in some of our other niche areas. So if you think of other niche areas like employment or trademarks, it can be very hard to cross-sell clients because your contact is just in that niche. So give an example of the sort of things I do. I often do benchmarking. So clients want to know what should be the correct fee to charge for their franchise. And it really differs depending on the business model. So if you're Lego, for example, and you manufacture the product and you basically have a monopoly on a highly popular product, then you make so much money on the product supply margin, you probably don't even need to charge a franchise fee. Lego in their franchise agreement, there's no franchise fee, there's just an obligation to purchase all the product only from them and an obligation to have a nice looking bespoke store with those lovely models made from Lego that draw everyone into the shop. So
Yeah.
that is a completely different.
Sounds a bit like distribution rather than franchise.
Yeah, I mean, what makes it a franchise is that Lego will control how the shop looks and what elements the shop must have. So, the shop design, there's the pick a brick wall, and there's the models that have to be there. There has to be a kids' play area. So that makes it a franchise, that they give them a system and a product, but they make the money just on the product margin. Whereas if it's a food business, a restaurant, there's very little product you can supply because most of it is made in the country fresh. And even McDonald's don't ship hamburgers from America, They let the franchisees source their own hamburgers and their own BAPs locally, and then don't make a margin on that. They make the money on the franchise fee. So then the franchise fee needs to be high, right? Or the scale needs to be. So there's a lot of help people need with understanding that and benchmarking that. And that's a good service we can offer because I have, hundreds and hundreds of franchise agreements where I can look what the fees were and I can anonymize that data and basically, prepare a benchmarking report for a fee. I tend to charge about 25,000 euro for that. And, people cannot get that data. That data is not in the public domain. So it is a really good service. And then after that, you can help them with building the structure that would support that chosen business model. And then that leads into the legal work. So it's quite a good complementary service.
And that's where us corporate lawyers step in, because first of all, yeah, do you advise us to become corporate advisors, consultants? That would be a good advice. We're also interested to hear what are the typical structures for companies using franchising?
So it really is quite a simple structure for a company. They should incorporate an SPV to be their franchising company, just basically it's a separate business that does something different from their main business. Their main business is owning and operating restaurant, and their franchise business is teaching others how to own and operate restaurants. So that could theoretically be quite high risk, because if you
Yeah.
don't teach them well, a salmonella outbreak, maybe you could be liable. So you need a separate company to isolate that risk. And then you need to think about the type of franchise agreement you want to use. And there are three types. There is a single unit franchise agreement. So I give you permission to operate one restaurant following my menu and design, and I'll teach you how to cook my recipes. Or, much more popular and more interesting for corporate lawyers, I go into area development. So it's not real estate development. This is a person who will open a number of restaurants or number of shops or hotels in their country. Typically, it's for one country. The parties will agree together the business plan. So for example, I see Uluk Becks here, we've done this deal for Krispy Kreme, and they will expect the franchisee to open so many production units, so many shops, and so many kiosks in the country over an agreed period of time. And the franchisee does all that by themselves. They don't bring in other people. So that's why I'm saying it's a bit like a joint venture there. And then the third structure that's possible is a master franchise, where you permit that person to also sub-franchise to smaller local sub-franchisees. That is the most complicated structure. And it doesn't always work for everybody, and there can be some confusion between the two structures because in part they can overlap. But the main difference with master franchising is that the master franchisee would only open one or two so-called pilot units to test the market. And then if it all goes well, they would get permission to then start sub-franchising to, for example, on a city-by-city basis in a certain country. It's more complicated because you have three parties, not two. And we all know as lawyers that three-party contracts are nightmares. So there's a lot of,
No.
thinking around to handle that.
And I mean, we're talking about brands, consumer brands. Let's do some name dropping. Can you, just to give context to the audience, what are your top three franchise clients? Maybe we recognize them.
I mean, at the moment, I would say a Mars Wrigley Group is a very big client. It's always good to catch them when they're new to franchising. If we're looking at, where can we pick up some business together, then the best is to pick up a client that wants to franchise for the first time, first do the consultancy and then the legal agreement, and then help them negotiate contracts in different countries around the world. So this is what we're doing for Mars Wrigley Group. We've first done the consultancy, and I was very lucky. They were happy to pay a lot of money because they couldn't find anybody else to help them. Now we're doing the legal agreement, and then I'm hoping after that we will be helping them with their first few deals. Another one is Kempinski Hotels. It was similar. It also started with them mainly wanting some benchmarking on franchise fees, and then wanting to understand how they would, well, it's quite a high-end hotel, right? How they would even franchise that, how they would support the franchisee to achieve the required success. Then maybe more kind of routine would be companies like Burger King or McDonald's or the restaurant group, the sort of fast food and family dining chains that we represent. I maybe mentioned it's not just the big brands like McDonald's, for example. I'm not for McDonald's. I'm against McDonald's for a very large master franchisee who has the rights to all of Scandinavia and who's looking to see if he can get additional countries.
Interesting. And then the link with the corporate lawyers. Do you have an example of an interesting M&A deal involving a franchise-focused target?
So, I mean, the master franchisee for McDonald's, that is Terra Firma Investments,
Yeah.
quite a famous private equity group, more of a family office in this day and age. They had an opportunity to bid for master franchise rights in a country in Asia. I mean, we're amongst Dentons here, right? This is a bit confidential, but it was
Yeah.
for Korea. McDonald's were selling the master franchise for Korea, but it came with an existing business of 400 existing McDonald's restaurants, which were a mix of locations owned by McDonald's Korea, which was a subsidiary of McDonald's Corporation. And then they also had local sub-franchisees. So you were going to take an assignment of the sub-franchise agreement and you were going to purchase the corporate locations. So that was an acquisition, but driven on a franchise business model. So we
Wow.
worked with our colleague in Korea on that, who did the corporate due diligence. But the reason we got the work was because they needed a franchise lawyer.
Yeah. So now that's interesting. So M&A, cross-border, specialization, and collaboration, if you take the whole picture.
I mean, I would say the way to do business together is to look out for this type of acquisition, like the one in Korea. Or I gave you this other example of a joint venture between Victoria's Secrets and a Chinese company, where it's driven by the brand and it requires a franchise agreement. You might just in your mind see it as just an IP license, but where it's replicating somebody else's business model, it really is more than an IP license. It is a whole franchise agreement, the product supply chain, the training and support, and it is that collaboration element. So not a joint venture that creates something new, but a joint venture that takes an existing business and puts it into a new market. That's where the franchise expertise, could make the difference maybe to other firms bidding for the work.
That's a good point. If we receive a pitch and you feel that there is a franchise element in it, and it has to do with an M&A deal, we should by default reach out to you, Babette, to ask for your review and to see whether you can say anything smart in that pitch.
You bounce
Yeah.
it off me if you wish. And
Yeah.
I think if it's branded, the sweet spot to my mind for us is a branded business. It's a country where our competitors may not have offices, and we have something where we're market leading. So in my case, it's franchising. Yeah, I'm sure we have lots of other areas like energy and sovereign wealth, where that is also the combination. So the sector, the country, and the market leading expertise. That's I think where we can,
Yeah.
and these two transactions build a lot of money, and there was no bargaining over hourly rates. But do I get them every day? Of course not. No, that's why we're talking.
Thank you very much, Babette. Very interesting and helpful. Wish you a good weekend when it starts.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you too. Take care.